be speaking, or will?
Well, I prefer at the end when we do questions and answers that he answers the questions because they get hard
Right.
technically.
Well, for you, we'll have two of these outlines, one for our system, one for system repair. So we want to get hooked up at and you're ready for that. When you guys get to the question and answer, just kind of stay up here where so we can capture your voice.
We'll start hugging.
Yeah.
two? I have to wear two?
We got kind of
Yeah, 'cause there's nothing else you're gonna attach it to.
yeah. So maybe you should put that in your pocket.
Well, how long are the cords? Well, then I just can't move, right? So I don't
Yeah.
know.
I think you should put it in your pocket and then you hook up here on your.
All right, let's
probably
try it.
okay.
You're not gonna see my pockets anyway, right?
Not behind the phone.
Are we on?
Yeah.
Okay, that's that one. So, let's see if we can discreetly stick it in here. Have you been talking to Ben? Is he okay?
Yeah, I talked to him this afternoon. He's doing okay.
All right.
Going
Just
day by day.
waiting to hear.
Yeah. Yeah, there's not much going on today. So they're hoping tomorrow to do
Biopsy.
the biopsy on the brain.
She's stable though.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't know anything's wrong with her,
Okay.
but she's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah. But she was definitely having symptoms and neurological. All right. That
That's the
so
time, I
different.
know.
So, how,
Shit.
like that?
Yep.
You can hear me?
So, if you don't mind.
No? Oh, I see it. That thing moves too?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you wanted to shove a little more cord in.
Yeah, I do. I do. I haven't. Help!
Oh, it all came out.
Okay. I don't know. I'm afraid I'm gonna ruin it. Is it gonna hurt it?
No, you're okay.
Oh, come on. All right, one,
They only
two.
give you 10 feet of cord, right?
Right. Well, that's, I don't know.
Just in case, huh?
How,
That should probably
do
be
you think that would do?
it. Yeah, I think so.
All right.
Perfect.
Does it look like everything's, don't tell me I have to turn anything on.
Nope, they're all
Okay.
on, so we should be good to go.
Right. If you start beaming up.
We don't have anybody named Scotty here, so.
Right.
Well, you want to pray for us, Pastor?
Well, Heavenly Father, we just thank you that we gather again here today as we continue to come and listen to some important health information. Just pray Mrs. Clark as she presents to us, and may it be of benefit. We pray in Jesus' name.
Amen.
Amen. So,
Just have to show me up really nice.
I can't see with my glasses
You see with mine?
on. Unless I'm like this. Is that okay? Do I look weird looking down? I have to look through my bifocal. Yeah. So I don't have it, like, I have a thing that I read off of. So,
So I'll just do this sitting like this, and that means that we're ready to record, and then just,
I have to introduce myself.
yes. Oh, do you not want to? If us would like to do that, or do you want to?
How do you want me to introduce myself? I mean, I don't know what to say.
Right.
Do you know what to say?
Yeah, I can say something.
Alright. I don't know what to say.
Just few background on you. You guys have a ministry together, mentioned the ministry name, and you've heard the ministry. This is what you're doing, part of it.
How about you do it?
Yeah, yeah.
All right, so give me a vote.
You ready to go back to the beginning?
Yeah.
We'll have to stand in front of that mic. Good afternoon. Thanks for coming out. It's good to be with you again here today. And this afternoon, the topic is charcoal. Why charcoal? And we have this ministry we call Northern Lights Health Education, mostly because we started out in Maine, where you'd be more likely to see Northern Lights. And part of our ministry has been doing lectures, health evangelism. We started out working with a conference evangelist in Maine. And we have a few talks that I give and a few talks that my wife gives. And this is one of the ones that my wife gives and does a very good job at it. When she finishes, I'll come up and we'll talk about a few clinical applications, and then we can have some questions and answers. So I'll turn the time over to Julie.
Well, hello everybody. All right. It's that just okay. It's on. It's working. Everything's working. Wonderful. So, you are the gatekeeper for your health. I mean, you decide what you're going to do. Are you going to run to the doctor? Are you going to just take some simple little thing in your kitchen and maybe for a cold or something? I mean, where do you begin to look for what you're going to do or what you're going to use to take care of your health when something goes wrong? Like, you run to the bathroom to get a Band-Aid when you cut yourself, right? So it's an important question I'm asking you, is where do you begin to decide what you're going to do? So health is what we as individuals believe health is. If you look at world history in regard to sickness and healthcare and what we now call doctors, you would find that everything that people do in regard to their health stems from what they believe about health. I mean, some people hate doctors. I mean, they have to be pretty much dead to go see them, right? And then, okay, so what one person believes healthy is not what another person believes healthy. And currently, worldwide, health has become to the forefront in society as a whole. Legislation is being pushed on a worldwide basis regarding health. That was really apparent in COVID recently. And this is extremely profound and also, I think, very dangerous. It's something to consider. So I have a question for you. Do you have to be wealthy to be healthy? Does God only help and bless rich people? Well, I researched one day and found a presentation online. I pulled this offline. And I found this chart here, this slide on a presentation. And I wanted to point out here, notice that it says chronic conditions such as diabetes, heart disease, obesity account for 75% of total healthcare spending. And that's really 75%. That's a lot. And then you see down at the bottom, it says most chronic conditions are preventable. This is just pulled off the internet. It's known that these are preventable. So this presentation documented that people who don't smoke, who lose weight, get exercise, stick to a good diet, they have almost 80% lower risk of developing chronic diseases. So that's very good news, if you ask me. And so medical expense debt is the #1 cause of bankruptcy in the United States. And so again, what we believe and do in our lives directly affects our health and directly affects healthcare spending. So, why care about how much healthcare costs when you're spending someone else's money, right? If you have insurance, well, doesn't matter. I'll just run to the doctor and get all the tests and spend on, yeah. So I worked in hospitals, and I saw the bills, what were I wasn't in billing, but I know what the bills were, and they're astronomical. I mean, it would, most people don't know because they never really see that. They only see their copay, their deductible, things like that. They often don't get an itemized bill. Or either that, they don't pay attention to it. It's just astounding how much healthcare costs. So I have friends, okay, some people don't have health insurance, right? I mean, I had some friends that had a very difficult time finding a hospital that would admit them because they didn't have health insurance. No, they didn't want them there. I don't know if that's legal or not. I don't think that's legal. But they said, we have the money to pay, and they're just like, no, we don't. We only take people with health insurance. Now, this was a while back. I hope they have made that illegal, that they can't refuse somebody care just because they're not insured. But it's just something to think about in regard to health care and health. So our ministry focus is on disease prevention and on self-care for people's health. And there's so much to learn, and I encourage you to learn all that you can. So I'm glad you're here. So like the law of gravity, there are laws of health. And what goes up must come down, right? Gravity? Okay. There's laws of health. And if they're broken or neglected or ignored or sidelined, then illness will result. So I'm glad you're here and you're learning all you can. I encourage that. But we're not here to learn about the 8 natural laws of health, or we're here to talk about something totally different. It's a remedy. It's profound. When I first found out about it, I was so excited that I ended up getting this presentation to give to you. I didn't put it together, and neither did my husband. A friend of ours put it together, of which at the end you'll know who that is, but I was just like, oh, this is wonderful. Can I have your talk and I'll go give it too? We need to tell everybody about this. And he said, sure, you can have it. So this is it. Medicinal charcoal, God's humble doctor. Now, historically, charcoal was first used in Chinese fireworks. And charcoal is still used today in modern pyrotechnics, fireworks. And then the Chinese developed gunpowder with charcoal after they invented fireworks. Charcoal is still used in gunpowder today. Many are aware that often water is filtered with charcoal. Anybody familiar with that? They've heard of, yeah. Okay, well, did you know that this knowledge goes all the way back to about, well, they say 450 BC, before Christ. And they've been able to show that the voyagers who would cross oceans, they would take, it's not like you can drink the ocean water, it's salty. So you got to bring water with you, right? And so what they would do is they would take the water in those wooden barrels, right, like that, like an oak wooden barrel, and they would scorch the inside of it. They'd burn the inside of the barrel and then put the water in. And that would keep the water pure and good for months and months. And then if for some reason the water would go bad, they would just take a piece of charcoal from their wood fire and put it in the barrel, and that would fix it again. Now, how about today? Charcoal is used in aquariums. Charcoal filters remove nitrates. Fish put off nitrates, and then the algae grows and it gets all yucky. You've probably seen that maybe in your life. And so we buy little charcoal filters at pet stores and Walmart and stuff like that for our little fish aquariums. But it's not just little aquariums, but giant aquariums around the world use charcoal filtration. So how about bottled water? Did you know that all bottled water is filtered through charcoal? So how do you take something that's black and dirty, how do you take dirty water? Let's just say, you had yucky, dirty water, and you filter it through something like black charcoal that's pitch black, and then it comes out crystal clean. Like, how does that work, right? It's a bit of chemistry, wouldn't you say? Or it's kind of mysterious and intriguing. All right, well, charcoal is used in swimming pools, including Olympic swimming pools. And, in fact, submarines would come to a screeching halt if it weren't for charcoal, because we breathe out carbon dioxide, and if we were in this room and if it was airtight, we would die if we didn't have something to take the carbon dioxide out. As a matter of fact, just as an aside, I have a friend who knew that you're supposed to keep your windows kind of a little bit open, just a little at least, for air to circulate in your house. If you don't, you're getting carbon dioxide poisoning. And he got a detector, and he decided to go around his house and see what was happening. And he went into his daughter's bedroom, and the three of his girls slept in this room because they wanted to, and it was a big room. And the detector just started alarming. It was way too high in carbon dioxide. And he went, wow. And so he opened the window, and that fixed it. But so remember that. That's something you'd want to know. Carbon dioxide. So down in a submarine, they're totally encased. They're waterproof down there, and they're breathing. And so they have to fix something. The air, they need air. And so they fix that with carbon or charcoal filtration technology. So, all right, charcoal is used in food coloring. Which jelly bean do you think has the charcoal? Kind of obvious on that, huh? All right. Which grape juice here do you think has been filtered with charcoal? It's a trick question. Yeah, did I hear someone say it's a clear one? Yeah, it is. It's the whiter one, the light one. Okay, and then there's makeup, if anybody uses that. Mascara, eyeliner, that has charcoal. And your pens, your black ink pens, they use charcoal. Then you've got vegetable oils. Charcoal is used to remove like rancidity, odors, flavor issues, and even color issues. And they filter it with a charcoal system, and it removes unwanted things so that you end up with your fine vegetable oils. And how about pharmaceuticals? They use charcoal to make these pharmaceuticals nice and clean. Air scrubbing. Okay, well, OSHA, I forgot what OSHA stands for, Occupational Safe and Healthy Health, Occupational Safety Health something association. Okay, so the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, made a regulation in 2013 that all these emissions that were coming out, these toxic fumes that would come out of these plants, they wanted in coal-fired generators, they wanted to put charcoal beds to clean the sulfites out and everything else that's toxic. So that's now a law because I don't know if you remember when we were younger in the 70s, in the industrial areas, you'd see these, manufacturing plants just billowing out smoke. It's kind of like our cars with smog control. It's like they thought, well, we can't just keep polluting the air. So, yeah, the EPA made regulations that they have to filter all that smoke coming out of these smog-generating plants. So charcoal's being used there too. All right. The beer industry capitalized on the idea of charcoal and carbon dioxide. Remember how I said that charcoal takes out carbon dioxide, what we breathe out? And that's probably what the fish do too. Anyway, the beer industry uses charcoal to remove carbon dioxide from the brewing process. And then they ship that carbon dioxide over to the other side of the plant and inject it into a beverage that most people drink every day. Do you know what that is? Yeah, carbonated drinks, sodas. So there's something else you didn't know about charcoal. Okay, charcoal's used in vacuums and commercial vacuums and filters. It's used in hybrid cars with the fuel cells. Charcoal is also used in gas masks. And this is where activated charcoal comes into play. Activated charcoal is where the old proverb applies of less is more. 1 pound of regular charcoal will make about 1/3 of a pound of activated charcoal, and yet less is more. We'll get back to that concept as we go further into this presentation. But so back in World War I and II, they started using coconut shell activated charcoal to be able to combat like gas warfare, mustard gas, and so mustard gas was being used back then. It was killing people, and so they discovered how it worked and made the masks, and it was saving a lot of men. And so today they're still using charcoal masks. But what you don't see is that there's charcoal in their uniforms now too. They actually have created spun charcoal, and they're using their military attire for chemical warfare, biological warfare, and nuclear warfare. So this mask does, right here, I don't have a pointer, do I? Okay. So the mask that on the left of the military guy is equivalent to what that nurse is wearing. She's wearing a charcoal mask. They do exist. You can get them. I know where you can find them. You could probably find them too if you Googled it. And so that mask does everything that the other mask does, and yet it's feather light. So nurses are using them, and they're used in all kinds of laboratories. So there's just a few of the applications that we use charcoal today, both in regular charcoal and activated charcoal. You see there are multiple applications. In fact, one company says, 1,000 applications today and 1,001 tomorrow. The industry is booming. The research is booming. They're finding all kinds of ways to use charcoal. But what about medicinal charcoal? Okay, let's go back in time to ancient Egypt. You've all heard about mummies. Is there anybody hasn't heard about mummies? Maybe little ones wouldn't hear about mummies. But mummies are the dead all preserved and wrapped up. Originally, Egyptians found that if they could bury their dead in layers of sand and charcoal, they could preserve the dead people. And that was important to them for what they believed happened after you die. So, where did they get this idea? How did they figure this out? Well, okay, let's just think about this. If you can imagine that you can preserve dead people with charcoal, what about living people? Something to think about. So what, I'm sorry, I'm skipping on my words. Here's what they figure. They figured that the Egyptians must have, at some point, somebody went into a forest and they observed this. When a tree dies and it just falls over and breaks apart, it actually decomposes much more quickly than the burnt one. So when a forest fire goes through, the burnt stumps actually stay intact longer. So they figured that's probably where they might have got the idea about using charcoal to preserve bodies for their mummies. It's interesting. Okay, now in 50 AD, there was a great Roman scientist by the name of Pliny. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, but and he said this: "It is only when ignited and quenched that charcoal itself acquires its characteristic power, and only when it seems to have perished that it becomes endowed with greater virtue." He was describing a mystery that modern science of the 21st century capitalizes on every single day. So coming forward in time, much forward, 1800 years, there was a man by the name of Michael Bertrand, a French pharmacist, a chemist, and in front of a much larger group than I have here today, with all the peers of his time, literally hundreds of scientists gathered for this. If you Google it, it will come up. It's known history about this. So he, in front of everybody, drank down 5 grams of arsenic, which was enough to kill like 150 men. And then, first he drank charcoal, then he drank the arsenic, and then he just kept talking and explaining what he had learned about all of his research. And they were just like, whoa, and he didn't even have a burp. He didn't even have nothing happened to him. And so that was news of the day. You can find that, I think, on Wikipedia. So normally a person with, that kind of arsenic would keel over and die very quickly. And so that was news of the day. That was huge scientific announcement or demonstration. So just a few years later after that, another scientist by the name of Pierre Curie, sounds French to me, took 15 grams of strychnine. Just took it. And then he took the charcoal. See, the other guy took the charcoal first, but he took it after. And again, nothing happened to him. He was fine. That was strychnine. That was enough to kill 10 men in his demonstration. So, notice this statement. I'll read it for you. "Charcoal mixed with breadcrumbs or yeast has long been a favorite material for forming poultices among Army and Navy surgeons. The charcoal poultice has also obtained a high character in hospital practice as an application to sloughing ulcers and gangrenous sores. And recently, this substance has afforded immense relief in numerous cases of open cancer by soothing pain, correcting the odor." That photor is an old English word for odor, and facilitating the separation of the morbid structure from the surrounding parts. It is unnecessary to mention other instances of its utility, for in this form, charcoal is now admitted into the London Pharmacopoeia and is in general use in all naval, military, and civil hospitals. That was by a surgeon by the name of James Bird in 1857. Well, I don't know where I was, but I had worked in the medical field my entire life and in hospitals, and for some reason, when I saw this slide, I was like, I guess I missed it. You know, I didn't know much about charcoal at all. I was very ignorant, I guess. So I thought that was something else. Now here's another quote. One of the most beneficial remedies is pulverized charcoal placed in a bag and used in fomentations. This is a most successful remedy. If wet, in smartweed boiled. Smartweed is a herb that, it's not marijuana. Some people hear the word weed, they think marijuana. No, smartweed is a herb that is used for pain, actually. If wet in smartweed boiled, it's still better. I have ordered this in the cases where the sick were suffering great pain, and when it has been confided to me by the physician that he thought it was the last before the close of life. I suggested the charcoal, and then the patient slept, and the turning point came, and recovery was the result. To students, when injured and bruised on their hands and suffering with inflammation, I have prescribed the simple remedy with perfect success. The poison of inflammation was overcome, the pain was removed, and healing went on rapidly. The most severe inflammation of eyes will be relieved by a poultice of charcoal, put in a bag and dipped in either hot or cold water as best will suit the case. This works like a charm. And that was written in 1897. Okay, let's keep moving. So that same person in 1897 wrote to a very famous doctor by the name of John Harvey Kellogg. He was the medical director of Battle Creek Sanitarium in Michigan, and at that time, the who's who of the world went to Battle Creek Sanitarium for healing. John Harvey Kellogg was like very famous. He's also the one that invented Kellogg's cornflakes. And he ran a giant sanitarium, and I'm telling you, the presidents of America, kings and queens of Europe, movie stars, Olympic medal winners, and many famous people from all over went to see him, and he was a very good doctor. And so he always took special note of listening to what this author, Ellen White, would say. And so she wrote him this. I expect you'll laugh at this, but if I could give this remedy some outlandish name that no one knew but myself, it would have greater influence. So that's interesting. Okay, medicinal charcoal. It is not burnt toast. I just discovered, 2 days ago? My stepfather, who's nearly 80, I told him what I was doing this weekend. I'm giving a presentation on charcoal. And he said, oh yeah, I always burn my toast. I know it's good for me. I was like, okay, I'm not talking about that kind of charcoal. So we had a little talk about charcoal. But yeah, it's not burnt toast. It's not your charcoal briquettes, like you barbecue. And it's not a cure-all. So don't get that idea either. Okay, so we're not trying to promote that it's a cure-all, but it works for a lot of different things. And there are just some things that charcoal does not work for, like constipation. If you were ever constipated, that's not going to help you. As a matter of fact, that is the only side effect that charcoal has for some people. For some it doesn't, for some it does. My husband, yes. And so if you take a lot of it, you're going to get constipated, but there's ways around that. You can, and we'll talk about that. You can take it with psyllium or just eat a lot of prunes when you're taking charcoal. Keep things moving. The other thing you need to know about charcoal is that what it does, which we'll talk about, it absorbs poison. Now, medications, I'm not saying they're poison, but it will absorb medications too. And so if you're taking medication, you do not want to take charcoal at the same time, or that medication just vanished. And so you would have to take it at least 2 hours before you take that medication, or at least 2 hours after you take that medication. Otherwise, you're not going to be taking any medication. You may take it, but it's really not going to do anything for you. So just keep those two things in mind. All right, let's go into medicinal charcoal in the 21st century. Okay. Now, I showed this slide just a little bit before. And what I wanted to point out on this slide is, I wish I could point it to you. See the little baby with the bottle? It says colic calm. Now, there was a woman, and she invented that. She was a chemist, or, chemist, pharmacist. I don't know, I get confused. Different countries call it different things. But we don't know how many degrees she had, but she was a mom. And her baby got sick, and she tried all kinds of things for her colicky baby. You ever heard of colic? My son had colic. I was like, the stories I could tell you. And so, you know, when a baby's crying, does anyone get sleep? Oh, no. And you just want to help that baby stop crying. Well, colic, yeah. Well, so she invented this remedy. And she figured it out in her kitchen, I suppose. And it worked. And it does work. And so that's one product called Colic Calm. She doesn't even have to work anymore. She made millions of dollars on this product. But it is true that you can find it, but you can also make your own at home. So it's good to know that charcoal does help baby colic. Okay. And I did use it with my son, and it did help drastically. Okay. Hospital use. Here's a good example of how charcoal is used in modern hospitals today. Number one is poisoning, whether you're conscious or not. The first thing they do is they use charcoal in ERs. Drug overdoses, things like that. And if you're unconscious, well, they just shove it down you, whether you drink it or not. Yeah. And okay, you see the long list there, but it is being used in hospitals. And that's where I said, I don't know how I missed it. Here I am working in hospitals. I didn't realize it is there. It's being used. So a lot of people, we've come in contact with quite a few people with kidney failure, and they're on dialysis. And then there is a liver dialysis. It's not something you hear commonly, but certainly everybody's hearing about kidney dialysis because they just have freestanding dialysis centers now that you go and visit 3 times a week when your kidneys are completely shut down. So your blood is going through and against a charcoal filter. And most dialysis patients have to do that like 3 times a week. So there's a fallacy that goes around that says, oh, I can't take charcoal. That'll take all my vitamins and nutrients out of my body. That's not true. These people are fine. They're alive. Their blood is going against charcoal 3 times a week for hours each time. So that's a fallacy. It's not going to take nutritional substances away from you, like your vitamins and nutrients that you need. Okay, poisoning. How many children will be poisoned? Lots of them, every year. And some survive, and some don't. So, Kentucky, the state of Kentucky, this was back a while ago now, 2001 study. They decided they wanted every household in the state of Kentucky to have charcoal on hand for accidental poisoning. They thought, we'll save time, we'll save lives, let's do it. They put a big media blitz on. They just put it on ads and put it in papers, and they really asked Kentucky to please do this. And what they found was that 115, out of 138 cases of home poisoning, 115 were children treated at home. And the average treatment was 38 minutes for a home treatment. The average ER treatment is 73 minutes. And time is everything in poisoning, everything. So half as many children vomited at home, and they saved lots of money, and they saved lots of lives. So that's interesting, I thought, Kentucky. So you hope you never have to use it, these fire extinguishers, right? Y'all have one in your house? And it just sits there, and you hope you never have to use it. But you're glad you have one, right? So I say charcoal is like a fire extinguisher. It's good to have on hand when you need it. And it can save your life, like a fire extinguisher. So, all right. I think I made the point. So charcoal we'll talk about what activated. Has anybody here heard the term activated charcoal? Okay, and then you have regular charcoal, and you're probably wondering, what's that about? Well, science does not even know how many exactly. I've seen lists of 4,000. I've seen lists of 6,000. Charcoal absorbs poisons, toxins. And I'm saying the word adsorb, like as D as in David, adsorb, not absorb like a sponge with the B. So it's not absorbing, it's adsorbing. So you're probably thinking, what is that? That is where it's like particles and chemicals attach to the surface of charcoal. And it won't let it go. You would have to take like 800 degrees Celsius to make that charcoal let go of that poison. And so it just sticks to it like glue, and if you're taking this internally, it just goes on out and into your septic system. So that's how it works. It's adsorbing. It's like a chemical, interesting process of how it's working. Okay, let's talk a little bit about medicinal charcoal. Why would you want to use charcoal? You need to know that. All right, now, let me tell you about iatrogenic death. What's that word, iatrogenic? It's induced by a physician or a complication from treatment. And so that's what that is. And this was back, 97. There was a study, and they were looking at these things, and the leading cause of iatrogenic death was negative effects of properly prescribed drugs. So you never know when they say, okay, we want to, usually you're not doing this, right? So you're in an emergency situation, oh, we want to try this drug on you, we think it'll help you. Well, not everybody is helped. Some are allergic to it. And so,
The key word is
try, yeah, well, practice. So, yeah, that was, and that was back in 2000, or 97, 2000, the study. So it's kind of scary to think about. Now, nosocomial infections are classified as iatrogenic death. And nosocomial means where you get an infection from the hospital. You didn't have it when you went, but when you got there and while you were there, you got this infection. And so that causes a lot of problems and deaths as well. Okay. So drugs have side effects. They all do. I mean, they all have side effects. And many are addictive, and even and more disease is becoming drug resistant. And so, in fact, some diseases, like nosocomial infections, will actually spread in the presence of antibiotics, right? So they have side effects, they're addictive, drug resistance, that's medications. Well, charcoal, on the other hand, is a God-given remedy. It doesn't, it's affordable, it's accessible, it's easy, it's not toxic, it doesn't hurt you, and why wouldn't you want to try it, right? It's a God-made medicine. Okay. Here's a study they did. This is interesting. They decided to see if what charcoal would do for cholesterol and triglycerides. So they gave 2 tablespoons 3 times a day for 4 weeks to a group of people. And lo and behold, it reduced cholesterol and brought the LDL down and made everything better on the ratio. And it even brought the triglycerides down like 76%. Now that's a pretty significant study. So John had mentioned with his cholesterol talk yesterday that charcoal can help your cholesterol. Well, if you're going to do this, if you were to try this, just remember that 2 tablespoons 3 times a day is an awful lot of charcoal. And so you are probably looking at constipation. So remember that, and to eat lots of prunes or lots of fiber or take psyllium with that charcoal, or you may get plugged up. I wonder if that study mentioned their constipation from it. Okay, world calamities. Now, when you think of world calamities today, do you have to look very far? I mean, it seems like every day there is some disaster happening. There's fires, there's tornadoes, there's earthquakes, there's, well, war, all kinds of flooding, terrible flooding. And so, yeah, when that happens, I was in the 1991 earthquake that collapsed the freeways near San Francisco. The epicenter was centered 1 mile from my house. And our town shut down. We didn't have water. Electricity was off. I mean, we were down, and we were down for a while. All the roads were collapsed. We couldn't get in or out. It was insane. But, so, what do you do then? What do you do if you can't get to a hospital or a doctor? I encourage you to learn what you can do for yourself at home, because not everybody has access to medical care at all times. All right? Does anybody know? This was a famous image back in, I'm going to give you a hint, 2005 or 4. Right at the end of 2004. Does anybody remember what this was? No? It's been a long time now. Okay, that was Fukushima, when the earthquake hit Japan and knocked out a nuclear power plant. It destroyed this nuclear power plant. But the problem was that when you destroy a power plant with an earthquake, a nuclear power plant, then you have nuclear leaking, which is deadly. We all know that's deadly. So when this happened, okay, let me explain. I'll read my notes here. Cooling systems on the extractors for these nuclear reactors have a bed of 10 tons of, take a guess, yes, activated charcoal made from coconut. 12 tons. That's a lot of charcoal. And that's what they put around nuclear reactors to absorb all that radiation poisoning. As a matter of fact, military, well, anyway, they know that, and they use the charcoal stuff, and they also use iodine, but we won't go there. Okay, so it's specifically made with coconut shell. Remember how I said the gas masks use coconut shell? So these extractors around nuclear power plants also use coconut shell charcoal. Why? Because it's the most absorbative for radiation. It works better. And so when this hit in 2004, the cost of coconut shell charcoal it just like tripled overnight. Why? Because all the governments who allow nuclear power plants went, earthquake, whoa, we better make sure we got enough charcoal everybody started realizing in the nuclear world, we better make sure our coconut shell charcoal stores are good. And so that was interesting. I didn't know that before. So there's stories after stories after stories of charcoal saving people's lives. Here's a quote by Dr. Agatha Thrash. She was a coroner or a medical examiner for the state of Georgia. And she said this: charcoal has amazing healing properties. In fact, if I were stranded on a desert island and could only take one thing along with me to protect me from disease, infection, and injury, I would choose charcoal. All right, I hope I explained this well. But what is activated charcoal? So charcoal, you've probably seen this in your, when you have a fire. So charcoal's made by just burning wood, and then it's not completely burnt to ash. It's before it gets to the ash stage, and it's that black stuff. Well, then they activate it by putting it in pressure from steam, I think, and it makes it crack and separate even more, which makes more surface of its surface. So we'll get there. So here, let me see. These used to be all around. We have some down by our house, these beehive ovens. I think that's what they were called. And they would put like green wood in, and then they'd start a fire, and then all the moisture would come off, and then they were making coal and charcoal for burning. And like when you go to make a barbecue, you can buy charcoal chips, and you light them up and they burn really nicely. But they don't do that so much anymore now. But we still have some old ones that are abandoned near our neighborhood. So charcoal can be made from different things. I've already mentioned coconut shell, but a lot of it's made from hardwood here. You can make it from bamboo. over in China especially, they use they use some bamboo and then they use some coal. Over in, I think it's Europe, they use peat, so you can make it from peat. Most of the charcoal I've seen here in the United States is usually hardwood or coconut shell. I haven't actually found the bamboo or the peat here, but that's what you can make it from. So charcoal is a carbon, and your lead pencils are carbon. Graphite it's a carbon product, and it has rings under microscope. I'm not sure what the significance of this is, but it's interesting. A diamond is also carbon, and it's the hardest substance known on Earth, the strongest mineral on planet Earth, and that's carbon. Now charcoal, on the other hand, looks like that. It's black powder. Well, I guess it's a chunk when you first get it, and then you can grind it into a powder. So it doesn't really have a structure per se, but this is what it looks like under a microscope. And see how it's got all kinds of crevices and nooks and crannies and surface. It's kind of like the coast of Maine, the sea, the ocean coast, has more coastline than from the bottom of Maine, the end, New Hampshire, all the way down to Florida. And you're thinking, how's that possible? Well, because its coast goes in and out and in and out and in and out and in and out and in. So it has more coastline than the whole rest of the United States, because it's got it's like a zigzaggy road. It may be 5 miles, but because you're zigzagging, it could be 20 miles if you're zigzagging that much. I'm trying to give you an analogy. So activated charcoal just has more surface than regular charcoal. That's what the difference is. They both work. And you may find that activated charcoal is more expensive or can't find it. It's okay to use just regular charcoal. Don't worry about that. They both work.
Which one works better? The activated
Well, you just have to use less, and yeah, the activated would be better.
surface area.
But yeah. All right. So 1 teaspoon of activated charcoal is enough surface area. You know how I just said about the Maine coast having longer coastline than the rest of the United States? Well, 1 teaspoon of activated charcoal powder, it has enough surface value to cover that whole soccer field. 1 teaspoon. So you're kind of getting the idea of how this thing works, right? All right. Now, food poisoning, gastrointestinal infections. The cause of 80% of all disease worldwide is GI infections. 50,000 deaths a day, 5,000 deaths from just like diarrhea, cholera. And so that is an intense infection. The cholera, you can die within 24 hours. All of these diseases have something in common. You'll see here the diarrhea and the vomiting, the diarrhea and the vomiting, diarrhea, vomiting. So over 90% of health and safety risks travelers suffer are preventable from like bad water poisoning. At least 50% of world travelers suffer a gastrointestinal infection. You have to be careful what the water you drink when you go to Mexico or wherever. And so this is something that charcoal is known to relieve, vomiting and diarrhea. All right, this is just an aside. There's these monkeys in Tanzania, and they're very unusual. There's colobus monkeys everywhere, but this is a special colony of red colobus monkeys in Tanzania. And what's unusual about them is that these monkeys are thriving because they eat. See, their diet is like mango leaves and almond leaves, and those things have high protein, but they also have a problem. They're toxic. And so the monkeys that would try to eat them would not do well. They'd give them diarrhea. Well, we don't know how, but this group of monkeys found that if they could just find burnt wood, the charcoal stick, he's got it right there. It was a video, but I can't show you the video. And they chew on this burnt stick, charcoal, and they don't have the diarrhea. And so they're thriving in health. They're doing really well. And that's just fascinating. Like, how did they learn that? How did they figure that out? I think it's a God thing. You don't have to go to Tanzania to get food poisoning, right? We can do it to ourselves. You can go to a local restaurant. You can go to your in-laws' house. You can go somewhere. And has anybody here had food poisoning before? Yeah, me too. Food poisoning is horrible. So you're thinking to yourself, oh no, and you know something's terribly wrong. You know it. And you're thinking, what do I do? And I remember laying there and thinking, I'll just ride it out. And I didn't end up in the hospital or anything, but I wish I would have known that charcoal would fix that within 15 minutes. If I just would have known that and had some, I could have taken it and not suffered. So, yeah, I want you to remember that. Travel sickness. Do you see on this list here, down towards the bottom, anthrax? Have we ever had an anthrax scare in the United States? Yeah, so there's another one. Charcoal helps or takes away anthrax. And it helps with insect bites. Here's a picture of a friend of mine in Uganda teaching all the locals about charcoal and how to use it. And then when they do this, they're very good at what they do. When they do this, they always ask for volunteers. Would anyone like to try the charcoal? And all the women came up, but not the men. And so, now when you drink this charcoal down, you think your mouth is nice and pink. Now it's black. You look funny. You almost can't even see your teeth at first. You smile and it's just black. But it's very easy to take. It really doesn't have a taste of its own. It just has grit. If you were to close your eyes, you would not notice taste. You would just notice the sensation on your tongue of grit. So anyway, when she says, you men don't want to try this charcoal. Well, okay. And it was funny. She said, come on, be a man. You had to be there. Okay. Did you know that charcoal was sold in the United States in the Sears and Roebuck catalog to whiten your teeth? Now that's going way back. So some of us are too young to know about that, but yeah, it works. What I do is I take my toothbrush with my toothpaste. They do make toothpaste now with charcoal in it, but we take toothpaste and then we just dip it in the charcoal powder a little bit and then brush our teeth, and it looks horrible while you're doing it. But then you rinse your mouth and you've got nice white teeth. It really works. It also works for like gum infections. If you have gingivitis, inflammation of the gums, very, very good. I've already talked about baby colic, and it does definitely work for that. How about pink eye? You've heard of pink eye? An infection in your eye, it's miserable. It works for that. And you're thinking, how do you get charcoal powder in your eye? What? that would be, no, you don't do that. What you do is you take a glass, a small little glass of water, the best water you can get. You put some charcoal in there, just a little bit, not much. Shake it up, and then let it sit. And after a while, it's black at first, it's quite dark, but the particulate will settle. And it will look like there's nothing but just black on the bottom of the white, clear water. But in that water is charcoal, little particles of it. You can't see it, but it's there. And then you would want to add a little bit of salt so it doesn't sting. Your eyes get really stung if it's just pure water. You'd want to make like a saline solution for your eyes, which is easy. I can tell you how to do that. But so you have a little bit of salt, a little bit of charcoal. It works beautifully. And every year I have severe allergies to something in the air. Every year, don't I? Something in this region. And my eyes get red and painful. And for those couple of months, I'm using this eye drops, charcoal salt eye drops, every day, and it really helps. So there is how you would use charcoal in your eye. Okay, poison ivy, poison oak, we have that, well, we have it where I live. Do you have it up here too? It's miserable, yeah. So charcoal absorbs the urushiol oil of that plant. It only takes like 1 nanogram, like the on the head of a pin, one little tiny little thing of urushiol oil from poison oak is enough to give like, I don't know, 500 people an itch. I mean, this stuff's toxic. I don't know, has anybody seen somebody with this rash from poison ivy? I've ended up in ER. As a kid, I used to get it so bad I'd swell shut my eyes. My husband has seen me swollen shut. And I didn't run to ER that time, but it's miserable. And so charcoal is known to help that. Now, just as a word of caution, if you have an open wound, like I'm not just talking about a rash, open wound, charcoal can tattoo you. It can, it doesn't always, but it can. And so you would want to you wouldn't want charcoal directly. You can use a barrier in between and it will work through that, like paper towel or something like that. So it works for dermatitis of poison ivy. Insect stings, bee stings, wasp stings. Yes, it helps. There's another reason why you would want to have charcoal on hand. Okay, ever heard of fire ants? I'm so glad we don't have them here. Fire ants are big in the South. So Agatha Thrash, Dr. Thrash's granddaughter, was bitten by hundreds of fire ants one time, and she was screaming hysterically from the pain. And so Agatha just grabbed her and scooped her up and ran her into the bathroom and put her in a bath and put charcoal in that water and laid her in that water. And she said within 2 minutes, pain was gone. Little girl's like, okay, I'm done. Like, let's get out of this thing. And so there's another thing you'd want to know about charcoal. Snake bites. I don't go anywhere without charcoal in hand, and I make sure I have like a little thing with me that I would use for a snake bite, which when you have charcoal, if all you have is that, use spit or something to make it wet and put it on there, but it will quickly dry out. You've got to keep it moist. It will not work unless it's moist. And so I carry along with me just a little bit of psyllium, and that would hold the moisture in together. You can use oatmeal, you can use flaxseed, ground flaxseed, just anything to hold the moisture in. Or if you spit and make it, a charcoal paste, put plastic over it so it keeps it moist, because it'll stop working if it dries out. All right. Spider bites. We got lots of these around here. Lots of them. I see them in my house, but I haven't been bit yet. I pray I never am bit by one of these. So this is a very serious spider bite. And that's day 1 or day 2 on the top, the thumb. And on day 9, that was day 9 down below. And so what happened was on day 10, they amputated. Because the spider, his venom, it eats, it necrotizes, it just eats and eats and eats all the way down. I mean, it just keeps going and going and going. So you want to do all you can to get the poison out of that spider bite. John talked about using clay, that works, but charcoal works too. All right. So how would you make a charcoal poultice if you're going to apply it externally? You would take, here's a recipe. 1 cup of water, 3 tablespoons of flaxseed, and 1 to 3 tablespoons of charcoal powder. And then you mix it all together and it makes like a jelly, a black jelly. Now you can use psyllium husk, but psyllium is way different than flaxseed. Psyllium, a little goes a long way, so you'd use much less psyllium. Otherwise, you're going to have a ball that's hard, and you could bounce it on the floor, and it would bounce back up to you. It's not jelly. If you use too much, it'll make a putty ball. So you use less of psyllium, because you want to make, like, with a poultice that you're trying to apply, you want it to be like jelly, like thick, and that's how you do it. You make that. You can cook it. It helps with flaxseed. It speeds up the process. Now, if you were to leave it for a few hours, it will go jelly-like. But if you just bring it up to a warm temperature, you'll see it go thick, and then take it off the heat. Yep. You're just trying to make that gel faster. So that's how you would make a poultice. Now, this is going to demonstrate without anything but just charcoal and water. And they're just making a paste there, which you'd do out in the bush when you got bit by the snake. And you just spread it on a cloth, whatever you have. If you don't have a cloth, that's fine. Put it on the bite. But the cloth will keep it nice and neat, and it has to be wet to work. So make that wet. Make sure it's wet, and then you apply it. And you want to keep that covered with plastic so it doesn't dry out. Because they didn't have the flaxseed or the psyllium, they're just using charcoal and water. It will dry out very quickly. And so you wrap it up with the plastic to keep all the moisture in. And there's your first aid right there. Then you can cover it with an ace wrap in addition to keep it nice and in place. We recommend that you use this like overnight when you're sleeping for 8 hours of application, so it really does a nice, good, long job. If you're running around during the day, it's going to be hard to keep that thing in place and on. You can use it at night. But I'm not talking about for a critical snake bite or spider bite or some emergency. I'm just talking about, because you can also, do we have this in our talk? Let me think. No, we don't. I'm just going to say, you can use charcoal poultices for really painful knees. You ever had a painful knee, a swollen knee? If you put a poultice around that and go to bed, in the morning, the swelling's down, the pain is down. It really helps with, aching joints. Okay, pets and livestock. They use it. You can use it for pets too. The company I know about sells pet charcoal. Now, you could market your charcoal and say this is for pets, but it's no different than the ones for humans. But you can market it that way. But it saves them too. Charcoal saves their lives. And so this little doggy here, she got into something. We don't know what, but she wasn't my dog, my friend's dog, but she got into something, and she was definitely had poisoning. And so the owners knew about charcoal and knew what to do, and got it in her, started, making her drink the charcoal. And then she was fine. So then the same dog, do I not have that? Wait, let me look. Yep. Same dog. Went through a barbed wire fence and got caught, and it ripped her open. You see that wound on the top left? It just ripped her wide open. And my friends lived right next door to a veterinarian. Nice, right? Yeah, very handy. So they got her in there and they stitched her up. But the owners are charcoal knowledgeable people. They're experts. And so they, after the surgery, and she was all stitched up, they put on a charcoal poultice because they didn't want any wound infection, right? She's been stitched up. She's going to have to heal. But they said, we're just going to put a poultice on this. She healed up in no time. And they went back, and the veterinarian was like, wow, this healed up beautifully. I was surprised because I really thought this would get infected. And they said, it's charcoal. And now this veterinarian that lives next door to my friends uses charcoal in her practice a lot for all kinds of things for animals. But yeah, there's an example of why you would want to use charcoal. I did this with a cat. A cat just showed up on our doorstep. It must have been a feral cat or it was a kitten. It was very small. And I looked at it, I went, something's wrong with this cat. Well, and then it just collapsed and it went unconscious. I was just like, And so I picked it up and I'm thinking, is it alive? Did it just die in front of me? But it kept breathing. I'm thinking, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? Well, it was unconscious, but it's breathing. Okay, I got a little pan and I put charcoal in the water. And I thought, I'm going to bathe this cat in charcoal. And then while I'm bathing it in charcoal, I'll just try and see if it has any swallowing reflex and try and give it little dropperfuls of charcoal swallowing. And the cat did swallow, took a few little sips of charcoal, and I didn't know how much to give the kitten. And I just thought, well, I've done my best. Here's me. That's it in the pan. It's asleep. I'm holding its head out of the water, and I'm just bathing it and trying to keep this cat alive. I had no idea what was wrong with it. And then my son was watching me, and he said, okay, well, what do we do now? I said, well, it's late. We got to go to bed. So we're just going to put it in this little box with a little towel, and we'll pray, and we'll see what happens. The next morning, we got up early. My son and I went running to that box, and there's a little kitten, wide-eyed, meow. It was fine. It was fine. We had no idea what happened, but it survived. And then we took care of it and made sure it had a good home. All right. Even cattle can use charcoal. They use it for scours. They are using it for mastitis with the milking cows. Helps with that. Here's a chart. the milking cows, they do it, they give it to them, and it really helps with milk production as well as, well, it prevents calculus. That's interesting. It does all kinds of things for them. They say it helps with cattle for improving meat quality. That's interesting. Reduction of smell and flies. For laying chickens, it helps with increased egg production. And so they're using it with animals. And they've done studies where they gave it to rats and it increased their lifespan by 34%. Do you think we could take it and get 34% of our... It's worth a try, right? Why not? I thought that was interesting. Yeah, prolonging an animal's life. Okay, how about, you ever heard of a green thumb? How about a black thumb? Believe it or not, they even use charcoal now in agriculture, in gardening. And see that diagram or the picture on the bottom? The middle has no charcoal in the soil. On the right is just standard charcoal. And then on the left, there's some special charcoal you can buy and pay probably a lot of money for. But you can see it makes a difference. There's your test plot right there. And so charcoal is making a difference. As a matter of fact, Monsanto, they're not Monsanto anymore, but they used to be called Monsanto, which Monsanto is the one that does genetic modifying of crops. They were buying charcoal by the tons for their agriculture. For whatever they were doing, they wanted charcoal, and they were buying it. That was interesting. So, taking it orally, let's see, I always get this confused. You put the water in first or the charcoal? The water, yeah. Get a jar that has a very tight lid, tight sealing. Put the water in it, and then put your charcoal in it very gently, and then put that tight lid on, and then shake it like mad, and then take the lid off and drink it down. That's how you take charcoal. I used to trick my son because I didn't think he would just take black charcoal water, so I would hide it in grape juice. He couldn't see it, and he loves grape juice, and that's how I got my little son to take it. All right, so that's how you do it, and you drink it down like a man. And so, yeah, funny stuff. All right, so that's your new beginning, and so which way do you go from here? You know, some people say, it doesn't matter. You know, God will take care of everything, and some people just don't care. What's going to happen is going to happen. But our choices can make a difference between having things go better versus things going difficultly or worse. And our choices can mean life and death. So I encourage you to keep learning all about health and what you can do to help yourself. Natural remedies and good health principles are wonderful. All right, now the author of this presentation is John Dinsley. That's what he looks like. And he wrote this book, charcoalremedies.com. It's sold on Amazon. It's also sold in the Adventist bookstores, and it might even be sold elsewhere. He has a very large charcoal company, and he is a charcoal broker, actually. But he trained at Uchee Pines with Agatha Thrash, and he was a missionary for many years, went all over, and he has incredible stories in this book that tell about charcoal. And not only it's not just a storybook of his experiences, it's also, you know, a book about charcoal, what you'd want to know about it. And what I like about the book is that he indexed everything in the back so that you can look up, okay, pink eye, I go to this page and it'll tell me how to do it. And so it's a nice book. And we've known him since 2005, right? So there you go. Clinical correlates. Come on up here, husband. My husband and I help people with their health, and he's had a lot of experience with this.
Well, I'll tell a story and then I'll ask if you have any questions. I had a lady call me and she said, my husband just had a colonoscopy because he's been having trouble with blood and mucus in his stools and pain. And the doctor says he has ulcerative colitis, and they said he has to go on some kind of drug. And she said they didn't want to go on the drug, so the doctor said, okay, I'll give you a month, and then you can come back and get another colonoscopy. If it's no better, you better go on the drug. They wanted to know what to do naturally to take care of the problem. So I set them up with a program. First, I usually go through their lifestyle and their diet, and if you want more information on that, we have a talk called autoimmune disease that you can watch on our website, or we have the book back here with a chapter about that in it. So I told him everything to do about straightening out his diet, taking out vinegar and ice cream and chocolate and nutritional yeast and oils and so forth, all of which are known to cause ulcerative colitis. And then we had him start doing charcoal, both by mouth, like you saw the gentleman drinking there. Had him drink a quart of water with a tablespoon of charcoal twice a day. And we also had him do an enema with the same formula. So he would take an enema twice a day, because we're going to get him cured in 1 month. So they started doing that. About a week later, the wife called me up and said, well, he's doing much better, no more blood in his stools, the mucus is almost gone, the pain's much better. They wanted to stop the enemas. I could see that wasn't the most popular part of the treatment, so I said, yeah, if you're doing better, then just keep taking the oral charcoal. A week later, she called, and they were doing much better, and so we lightened up on some of the initial dietary restrictions and had him start taking charcoal tablets. And at the end of the month, when he went back for his colonoscopy, they gave him a total clean bill of health. And they're friends of the family, so we keep in touch with them, and that was 20 years ago. Yeah. He's still doing fine. So it can be cleared up. Otherwise, most of these people with that kind of thing, Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, inflammatory bowel disease, will keep going back to the hospital, have surgeries to have part of their bowels removed, all kinds of problems. And so the charcoal absorbs the inflammation, it absorbs any toxins. It helps heal ulcers by covering them, like the ulcers in the colon, and so it's very beneficial that way.
Do you want to tell them about the eyes?
Okay. Another lady gave me a call, and she says, my daughter has just been to see the ophthalmologist, and he wants to put her on methotrexate, which is a cancer drug, for her eye inflammation that he says will make her go blind. Well, I said, well, why don't you have your daughter give me a call, and we'll just go through her lifestyle and see what might be causing it, give her some lifestyle, some natural remedies to fix the problem. The story was she had began to see halos around lights and had pain in her eyes. Went off to the ophthalmologist. He looked in her eyes and says, well, you have a disease called pars planitis, an autoimmune inflammatory disease of the front of the eye, a little back behind where iriditis would be. And so he put her on steroid eye drops. For about a year, the steroid eye drops kept the problem at bay. Halos continued to be seen around the lights, but at least the pain and the inflammation seen on exam was gone. After a year, though, she developed a complication or a side effect of the steroid eye drops, which was glaucoma, too much pressure in the eye. Well, so then they put her on a second set of eye drops, glaucoma eye drops and steroid eye drops, which she did for another year. But at the end of the second year, that's when the pain increased. The steroid eye drops were not working anymore. The glaucoma eye drops were not working anymore. And that's when the ophthalmologist had prescribed methotrexate.
And this was a young woman who was a mother of a few children, and yeah, it was pretty serious.
So I started by finding out what her diet and lifestyle were like, what might be causing it. You know, in the case of disease, we should find out what the cause is. And there were a few lifestyle things, a few environmental things that needed to be tuned up. We got her on a good exercise program and eating a lot more fresh fruits and vegetables. But as far as treating the actual eyes, we had her do a combination of a hot foot bath and a charcoal fomentation to the eyes, a cold charcoal fomentation. So for the actual eye treatment, we took and we made a bag out of the top part of a pillowcase. You know how there's a band around the top part of a pillowcase? We cut that off, cut one end open so we had a bag, put about a half a cup of charcoal powder in there, safety pinned the end closed and rolled it up a bit, and we'd have her dip that in ice cold water, put it on her eyes while she had her feet in a 5-gallon bucket of hot water and a blanket around her. And so we're accomplishing several things by doing this. The hot foot bath is often used for headaches where we're decongesting the blood out of the head. We put a cold wrap around the head and the feet in hot water. In this case, I'm taking advantage of the moving the blood out of the eyes and head with the hot water at the feet, but then a cold fomentation of charcoal to pull the inflammation out of the eyes. We had her do that twice a day for 20 minutes. And then go lay down for 20 minutes with a pillow over her eyes. And then at another time during the day, we had her doing warm and cold compresses to the eyes a couple times a day. Well, within 3 days of starting that, the halos that she'd seen for 2 years around lights disappeared. Her vision cleaned up. At the end of the week, when she went back to the ophthalmologist, he looked in her eyes and said, wow, the inflammation has greatly cleared up, and he checked the pressure and it was fine. So he sent her home. 2 weeks later she came back and he checked her eyes and wow, the inflammation's all gone. That methotrexate sure works wonders. And she said, well, I have a confession to make. I haven't been taking eye drops or methotrexate. You want me to tell you what I have been doing? Oh, I guess you better. What have you been doing? So she told him, and he's like not impressed and not excited. And he says, well, let me see you back, I think it's 3 weeks. He had to come back in 3 weeks, and she was totally clear. So he says, well, I might be missing something. I don't know, and I want to make sure I'm not. Now, can I send you down to a super subspecialist in Boston that sees nothing but pars planitis? And so she headed off to Dr. Foster down there, and he looked in her eyes and said, what are you doing in my clinic? You don't have the disease that I see, pars planitis. And she says, can I tell you how I got rid of it? And he's like, well, if you must. He didn't want to really hear. But anyway, and she's another person we, keeping tabs on, and that's been about 20 years also.
Yeah.
And she's doing well as well. So a couple examples.
We've had friends that were in kidney failure. Remember we talked about kidney failure? Dialysis. And if you put charcoal poultices over the kidneys, it will pull out what?
Well, the charcoal poultice, you put it in a paper towel like she showed here, and the paper towel will be yellow with a urine-colored stuff. Mm-hmm. It pulls the toxins out that otherwise the kidneys are trying to deal with. Mm-hmm. And we also give the charcoal by mouth to our kidney patients. Mm. And have a lot of people that were headed for dialysis that kept from going on dialysis.
Yeah.
And
not just because of the charcoal, but
diet changes as well.
Diet changes and lifestyle changes, and they reversed their kidneys started working better again. So.
Any questions about charcoal?
For a number of years I lived in Hawaii.
Yeah?
And we could always tell when people came whether they were allergic to mangoes or not.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm just going to say, I moved over to Australia and I loved the mangoes, and I was eating them. I was climbing in the trees and just going crazy for mangoes because I didn't grow up getting to have that. And I found out that mangoes are closely related to poison oak, poison ivy. So I was like, oh no, but it didn't hurt me internally. It just made a rash wherever I touched it. So I could eat it, but I couldn't touch it. It was weird. I kept eating the mangoes, but it does cause a rash.
So
Yes,
yeah,
it
we
would
would
help.
use it. One of the ways we do it for the eyes, if somebody's got quite a bit of swelling and redness, is we'll use those little eye cups used for eye wash,
Yes.
and take the charcoal water, we call the charcoal gray water, put it in the cup, and have them put it to the eye and blink it in the charcoal water.
Yeah.
And that's very helpful at bringing down swelling, bringing down redness of the.
I know firsthand because I get that every year where my eyes are red and just excruciatingly painful, and I can't live without this eye drop, eye wash.
Do you have to put the salt to make the saline kind of?
Plain water stings, so it's nicer. You don't have to if you don't mind stinging, but if you put the salt in the water, the sting is not there. I can hold it on there. I do. I hold it on there, and for like a minute, I open my eye and just treat it, and I'll do that every few hours when it's really.
Just an aside, when I was in college, I would chase tennis balls for some of the guys who were out on the tennis courts. I had no idea at Pacific Union College that all of these were surrounded by poison oak.
Oh,
So I was chasing the balls out through there, I never got anything. I've never gotten poison oak.
You're not allergic.
Not allergic,
Yeah,
but I'd like to know for the charcoal.
yeah.
we have.
I wish I were not allergic.
We have a friend that got poison oak, and he decided to treat it with charcoal without the paper towel. Just put the charcoal right on the spot. He's now got a tattoo the shape of a rash right there. It will get stuck in wounds that are open. Go ahead.
My question was, I used to give my children something that was supposed to prevent them from getting poison ivy or poison oak. It was from the combination pharmacist in Illinois where we lived. What do you think that was? Do you think that had anything to do with charcoal?
Probably not charcoal. It probably could have been jewel weed. Jewel weed is an antidote for poison oak. A lot of times it grows nearby poison ivy or poison oak. It's often used in salves that people make for treating poison ivy or poison oak.
Okay, and the other question was, I have diabetes and my kidneys keep going from a 3 to a 4 and stuff like that. So is charcoal something that would help me with the diabetes and with my kidneys?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
Yep,
I will be here for the diabetes meeting, by the way.
Yes, and we'll have the book. We have the books available out back with all the different talks that we give in written form and chapter on diabetes.
Yeah. If you want a hard copy, if you don't mind reading it online, it's all on our website. You can get it there as well.
For free.
For free, no.
For the
charge.
downloaded
Yeah.
ones.
For PDFs.
I want a hard copy.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, I have two questions. The first one is, you take charcoal, how much, like, for example, I've been taking charcoal for years for tummy issue, like stomach ache or whatever, for our
Yeah.
children and ourselves. But say like the capsules, I'll take 2 capsules. Like how much can you take? And then the other question is the powdered, when you make a poultice, like, what am I trying, like the dosage, how much do you mix?
Uh-huh.
Like a teaspoon, a cup, or you know what I'm saying?
Right. Well, we can go back here to that recipe.
Overdose.
You can't really overdose. The only downside is if you get constipation.
Okay.
And don't take it when you're taking your medication.
Okay, I saw the charcoal poultice, so just kind of go by that.
Yeah, so.
And then like when you do like the bug bite thing, you just do a little, just add a tablespoon?
Well, however much right, well, that would make quite a bit. And you know, if you make that recipe there, 1 cup worth, what you don't use, put in your freezer, and it's there for next time. I put them in little baggies or Ziplocs and have just individual little, and whenever I need something, I go to the freezer, it's there, I've got it. You know, I don't have to make it up.
Okay, that answers the poultice thing. And then what about like the capsules or the tabs?
Yeah.
How much?
Most people don't take enough, and the capsules have more charcoal in them than the tabs. The tabs have fillers just to make it into a tablet. But most of the time, if I have a tummy ache, I'll take at least 3 tablets, if not more. And I'm a little bit leery of the capsules. I had one lady that took too many capsules, and the capsules didn't break down. And so she didn't really get the charcoal either, but she got this stomach or colon problem from undissolved capsules. And I forget what they finally did for it, but so I go for the tablets myself, and not the capsules, right?
And just in case it doesn't dissolve, you know,
Yeah, we do the
you
powder
can
a
just
lot.
you can just buy powder, and
I mean, I have both.
yeah.
Okay, and then the other question I did not catch was you could take both. If you don't have activated charcoal, what is the other one?
It's just regular old charcoal.
It's like,
I
No.
don't. I'm sure people sell that. I don't know who's selling what out there.
If
Yeah.
you look at his book here, which we have copies for sale back there, he says, you know, he talks about stories where they were out in the wilderness and they had a problem and they just went to a lightning struck tree and shaved off the charcoal and used it. It's unactivated, but it's still functional.
Yeah, but you don't want to use charcoal briquettes.
Right.
Because they have all kinds of other chemicals added to them.
Right.
Unless they do have that natural charcoal, you know, where it's just chunks.
Sure,
Yeah, you could probably use that, but
We
the
have-
formed briquettes, they have like chemicals to make them burn better, and you
That's
wouldn't want
right.
to use that.
Yes, absolutely. Question. Yes.
So you were joking earlier about the burnt toast. Coincidentally, you just have that up there. I heard years back that the burnt toast is actually carcinogenic. Is that true?
Yes.
Yeah, because it's got not just burnt carbon, it's got oils and carbohydrates and other things.
Acrylamide, right?
Acrylamide, yeah.
It makes acrylamide,
Really?
which is toxic.
Other questions? Yes.
Since we moved to Missouri, I found out there's ticks like crazy in Missouri.
Oh, yeah.
So charcoal poultice comes in very handy for them.
Yes.
Yeah.
I do kind of like you said. I keep mine in the freezer, but I use psyllium powder with
yeah.
my charcoal, and then I just mix. I usually did about equal parts, but I wouldn't have to do quite equal parts, and then just put a little bit of water in, just enough to make it a paste. And I put it in a Ziploc bag, like a quart Ziploc bag, and then I use my rolling pin and roll it out to about a 1/4 inch.
Perfect.
And then just put it in the freezer, and then when I need it, I just go cut a piece off and put it right on.
Right.
And it can be on for days, and it'll still be a gel. Like when you take it off,
Right.
it'll still be a gel.
Yeah. Very good.
This is a selfish aside. We're newbies here in this area as well, the last 7 or 8 months. How many of you have these brown recluses in your home? Have you ever found them, and where do you find them?
They're everywhere.
We found them in clothes. We
They're
found them
everywhere.
on the floor. We found them in, bottles and
Boxes.
boxes and jars left around.
Yeah. They're around.
That's encouraging.
But we've been here just about 5 years, and we have not had any attack us or bite us. So praise the Lord, you know. Just pray and trust.
Is it true that like peppermint oil can repel insects, more specifically spiders?
Yeah, and I've heard cedar as well.
Okay.
Cedar, they don't like that either.
Geranium.
closet would be good, wouldn't it?
Cedar line house.
Yeah,
Right.
geranium oil is a repellent as well. Geranium oil,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
We have something called Cedar Side. It's a company that makes a spray bottle with a cedar oil. And we spray it for mosquitoes on ourselves or for ticks.
Yeah, and you don't have to put it on yourself. You can use it as a surface spray. It smells quite pungent. So.
Very good. Well, you've been a good group. Let's see. Yeah, we've got both the book that I've written back there with all the different diseases and how they are caused and what the remedies are, and then we have John Densley's charcoal book.
A few of them. If you need more, we'll tell you where to get them. You can get them on Amazon, or you can buy them directly from them. Yeah.
All right. Well, you've been a good group. We've kept you here quite a while.
Tomorrow, I have people thinking tomorrow is happening, or what is happening?
No, I had